Hello there. This is Genty Grace, founder of Publish Your Purpose. And I am sitting here today with L.A. Batista as we talk about your new book, which is called Falling, A Journey of Strength, Survival, and Rising. And I have a visual for anyone who's watching this on YouTube versus just listening to it. I am so happy to be having this conversation with you today. And I feel like there's a million things that I want to ask you, but I would like to just kind of start with a little bit maybe about, who you are and what this book is about.
Okay. So I am a retired speech therapist. I worked in a school system for like close to 15 years. I'm a mom and a grandmother, and I liked writing my whole life as journaling, and I decided that maybe some of these stories I should put into a book form. And it took a long time, off and on, many years, just getting it out. And then I decided to just stick with it and have it printed. And that's the point I'm at right now.
I love that. And so your book is recently out. And I was saying before we hit record that I don't always have the joy of like actually holding the book while we're having these conversations. So it's recently out. Can you give just kind of a backdrop of like, because it's called Falling and it's got multiple meanings to it. Also, your niece, I believe, is the one who illustrated this cover. And it's really gorgeous. Like
Yes.
she was very intentional about the detail here. So can you kind of just share about like, why Falling, like why that's kind of the perfect title, what the book is about?
Okay, so I have spinal muscular atrophy. It's a inherited rare neuromuscular disease. And one of the things that happens is your muscles get weak and you fall a lot. So I fell many times as a child, all into adulthood. And it was really hard to just be on the ground falling all the time, needing people to help you up and feeling embarrassed and all that. But I realized as I was writing my journey that those falls were opportunities to rise. And every time I talked about a story where I fell, there was either a person there to help me up, or I found a way to get up on my feet. And life is about falling, not failing, but falling. You fall in and out of love, you fall out of grace. There's just all kinds of ways you can fall. But it's what you do after the fall that makes life worth it. So that's the meaning behind it. And I also felt, because I had that weakness, that I was fragile, like a leaf holding on in a windstorm, maybe even an autumn leaf ready to fall. And as I wrote the book and I ended it, I realized that I wasn't the weak leaf. I was the strong tree. And that's why I decided to make the cover as a woman being a tree, because we are so strong as women and we bring life. And just like the tree does with the leaves.
Yeah.
And when the leaves fall, we're shedding. But we could be shedding the bad things. We could be just shedding the things that we didn't like as we grow. So it really has a lot of different meanings in it. I just love the idea that you could be interpreting it the way you want.
Yeah, and I think that's what's great about having a really good visual. And I think in your case, like it's a really beautiful illustration, and then kind of the leaves kind of translate into the inside of the book too. I definitely have some questions that I want to kind of go down. I'm curious, can you just share a little bit of like the arc of the story that you're sharing? Because I know that there's, to whatever degree you feel comfortable sharing, because I know that there's a lot of, it's not just your journey of falling, but there's a whole bigger story here. So any specific things that you want to kind of share about like what in here that might kind of capture someone's attention to say, ooh, I really want to go buy that book?
Well, there's a few little arcs in there, and it's just about starting on a path and thinking one thing about yourself and growing and learning, and then at the end you're the strong person that you didn't realize you were all along. When you look back, you see it. And it's just a long journey of finding purpose when you feel like I had to retire early and I felt like, what am I going to do? And then I wound up channeling my writing skills into writing children's books and writing articles and now writing my memoir to share with people that no matter what you go through, you could come out and find something productive to do with that hurt and with that struggle that you went through.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think your subtitle of A Journey of Strength, Survival, and Rising is like a good balance, because there's definitely a lot of strength that was required, a lot of survival instincts required, and obviously the rising in opposition to the falling. When we think about your readers, right? Like, there's obviously going to be people who know you because you've written a book and everybody's like, oh my God, she wrote a book. I have to go check it out. There's going to be people who are part of the SMA community who are like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I want to support her. This also helps spread more awareness about SMA and what that means and what it's like to live with SMA. When you think about the average person who's picking this book up, what is your hope for them? Like, what is the kind of the feeling or the emotion that you kind of want to leave them feeling as a result of having heard your story?
So, as you mentioned about people with SMA, and also I was a single mom. So, single moms, people with SMA, and I survived some domestic violence also. So, anybody reading the book, no matter what your adversity was, you could just see how no matter what life, puts in your way, you can survive it, you can rise from it, and you can just have your life in your own hands and make your own choices and make your own happily ever after. One of my friends said, oh, I love the way the book ended. It was like a happily ever after. And I said, we have to create our happiness, our happily ever after. So I think that was one of the reasons was I know there are women out there who are struggling, whether they have a disability or not, and struggling to raise their children, or just struggling to find a way to financially support themselves and their families. And I have a little bit of that in the whole book. So I think that if you're stuck in some part of your life and you feel like you just can't get out of it and you just can't move forward, I think reading the stories that I wrote about would really help women realize that, you know what, there's nothing going to keep me down. I could still find a way out of this situation. The worst situation could always change. And another thing I learned about this, that people will hopefully look at their own lives. So many of the terrible things that I write about, not that it's such a terrible book, but we go through terrible things. But if you name anything that I went through that was negative, it led to something positive.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how they say one door closes, another one opens, but it really is a journey of this seems like a terrible thing, but in reality, it was opening a door for something even better.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the beauty of life, like you don't realize how this horrible moment you're living through can open up and become something wonderful and provide an opportunity for you to just have better opportunities and to meet better people. And yeah, that's one of the biggest lessons that I like people to look at and look at their own lives and realize, we're not our mistakes, we're not our failures. And those are the things that will just teach us and help us become stronger and make our lives better, even though it's a negative thing.
Yeah. Do you think that you had that recognition and awareness before writing the book, that every negative thing that you had gone through had that positive, some kind of positive outcome to it? Or was it really when you were putting it all down on paper where you're like, wow, I guess I didn't realize like how everything was a stepping stone to something better?
I don't think I realized it at first,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I was young. I was just surviving the moments and pushing through them. But looking back, I would say, oh, it's good that I didn't get that job because this job had these better benefits or whatever. And then I started teaching myself to find the glass half full. See, what can I find good coming out of this situation? What opportunity presented itself when that one was taken away? And yeah, I think that's the way it went for me. And the more I wrote and the older I got, the more I put all of those clues together. But in the beginning, I don't think I was too young. I was just trying to survive.
Yeah. And I think that's what's beautiful about having a book like yours, where there are a lot of deep stories in here. There's a lot of, there's pain, there's heartache, there's physical pain, like there's a lot. But you have it framed where all of those stories are, there is the positive outcome that came from it too. So that way, when your reader is going through it, they're not being kind of traumatized by your story, because sometimes authors don't really know how to strike that balance of sharing everything that they've gone through, but doing it in a way that doesn't actually cause any type of harm potentially to the reader, whereas yours has a very nice balance in all of those directions.
Right. Yeah, I didn't want people to feel sorry for me and say, "Oh boy, what a life. She, poor girl, everything, all these terrible things happened to her." And maybe I did have a little more of my share of it than other people do. But like I said before, it's what you do with that pain. It's what you do with those experiences. How do you survive them? And how do you find the opportunity to make things better?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about privacy, because before we hit record, we were talking about how, like, once you put it into a book, it's no longer private. Like, now it's just out there for other people to read and consume. How does that feel? Like, and again, at the time that we're having this conversation, your book is very new. So it hasn't been a ton of conversations yet, but like, how is it feeling knowing that all of this is now, because you were working on writing it for such a long time, right? The publishing process is not always, the fastest process. And so now it's like there for everyone to just kind of like dig into your private life. Like, how does that feel?
It's scary. It's kind of like a roller coaster. On the one hand, you want people to get pulled in and feel what you went through. And on the other hand, some of the things are very private, maybe even embarrassing, and maybe you feel ashamed of things that happened or whatever. And but to really draw people in and to really let people experience what you went through and show them that no matter what embarrassing or sad or hurtful things happen to them, they could relate to it. I didn't want to sugarcoat it, and I didn't want to make it like perfect, and because that's not the part of life that we draw from,
Mhm.
you know? And, I try to not expose people in the book. I try to protect everybody by changing names, but it's my story and I have to tell it. And, if some people feel bad about things I wrote, I can't protect them, fully, but I tried my best. And I guess that's the best I could do.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a good PSA for authors who, someone who's watching this, who's supporting you, or might be wanting to write their own story. That, you know, there's a really good Anne Lamott quote, which is something to the effect of, "If people wanted you to write kindly about them, they should have treated you better." Like, I always butcher the quote, but it's something to that effect. And I feel like you're circling around that right now. That, our job as the author is to share our story, our version of the truth, our
Right.
lived experience. And if someone was unkind to us or there was an injustice, that's on them for having been the one that was the creator of that toward us. And so, and at the same time, we do have to find that balance of making sure that we're really walking that line of what's my truth versus someone else's truth.
Right. And you don't write the book for revenge, and you
Mm-mm,
don't write the book to pay people back. And
mm-mm,
that's why you change the names and you don't always, tell every little detail. But it's like you said, it's my story of what I experienced,
yeah.
and I have to write about it. It was freeing to put it on paper. It was painful and sad at some times, but you know what? Afterward, I think it was all worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially if I can have one person say, "Wow," a couple of people already have told me, "I wanna write my story too. I never thought I could, but I think I'm gonna try now." Because everyone has a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
They really do.
Yeah, it's getting the courage to tell it, because sitting down with your own thoughts and a blank cursor on a screen is a really terrifying experience.
Yes, and it's a journey, and you get writer's block, and you get sick of it, and then you love it, and it's a love-hate relationship.
100%. One of the phrases that you had said before was that you've had people saying to you, like, "I didn't know." Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I find that so powerful, because I, like you, have also written a memoir. And I just recently was at a conference last week and I had someone say that exact phrase, like, I didn't know that you were going through insert all of the things here while we knew each other. And I'm like, yeah, that was on purpose. That was by design. So I would
Exactly.
love for you to kind of share that, especially because it's so recent and fresh.
Right. So a former coworker read the book and she said, Lisa, I didn't know. And she said, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, I didn't want you to know. I wanted you to see me as the professional in the building doing my job. And if I needed help or I needed to expose certain things, I did. But I didn't want everybody knowing everything I was going through. I wanted to be strong and I wanted it to be private. And she said, do you regret that you didn't say more and tell more? And I said, no, I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all. But she was really surprised how she knew I had SMA, but she didn't know how deep it was, the feelings, the struggles, and everything I went through. And
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I should put that on other people, you know? That
Mhm.
was my struggle, and I didn't want to focus on that. I was there to do a job, and I pretty much hid most of it as much as I could.
Mhm. I feel like there's something so relatable about that. Like, I hadn't thought about it in the frame of, like, I didn't know, because I've had many people tell me that over the 5 years that my book has been out. And it didn't actually occur to me of, like, what a key phrase that is until the way that you said it, where I was like, wow, that's right. Because we are intentionally not trying to share a story. We're trying to just get by. No one needs to know what's going on back here. You just pay attention to how I'm showing up right now. You don't need to know all the details. Um,
Exactly.
and then you get to this place where you write a book and now everyone's got all the details. So it's like completely opposite of where you
It's so
started.
true. Yes.
Mhm. What is, as we're kind of like wrapping up closer to concluding here, again, it's recently out. I know you already have some reviews on there. Is there anything that has just been, caught you off guard with reviews? And also, PSA, if you were reading this book, please take the time and write a review. Book reviews are so important when it comes to getting new eyes on books. So please do whatever you can to carve out the 5 minutes it takes to leave a review for this book. But anything in that range that you want to kind of share about just kind of the reviews that you're already seeing and the feedback you're already seeing?
All the feedback has been really good, and some of them took my breath away because someone said something about falling apart and going back to and putting herself back together over and over, and that it just the way she wrote it was so beautiful, and I didn't expect it. It took me back a little bit, and for people to say, it's about resilience and that, but she just wrote it so poetically and it really surprised me. And some people will see things that you didn't realize, you know, and it's just really good to read those reviews and to show that you are reaching people, even people that knew you, and didn't really know what you were going through. They really, it strikes a chord with them,
Mhm.
and they're able to relate to some other struggle they had. It's not the same struggle, but everybody in one point of their life felt different, or they didn't belong,
Mhm.
or, whatever they're going through. And I don't think anybody in the world goes through a perfect life. So someone's going to be able to relate to any story of struggle, whether it's financial, emotional, physical. We all have struggles.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, the mark of a well written book is that someone can find that takeaway and apply it to themselves. So maybe it's not someone who has SMA, but they have another lived experience that has caused them some type of struggle in their life to be able to say, oh wow, like, she can do it. Like, that gives me inspiration, hope that, like, I can do it too. Like, I think there's something like really powerful. It seems so elementary at the same time of, like, oh, if you can do it, I can do it. But there is, I think, something beautiful about the power of storytelling, because I think the undercurrent is of, like, okay, if she can be resilient, there's no reason I can't be resilient. And it helps people kind of get out of those dark times that they might be in.
Exactly. And I think by me reading memoirs through my life, I
Mhm.
felt motivated by people too.
Mhm. Yeah, I love memoirs, which is why, it's one of the things that we publish, because I feel like you just never know whose story. Like we really have no idea what people have gone through and what their lived experiences are.
And
Truly.
just like they said to us, I didn't know.
Hmm.
There's moments that we don't know,
Hmm.
you know. I recently was catching up with an old friend from elementary school, and she mentioned that she had cancer. And I was like, I didn't know. And I was just like, and then I realized, of course, she's not going to call everybody up and tell them that that she's sick. But we feel like we wish we knew, just
Hmm.
like a former coworker who said, I wish I knew. I wish I knew more.
Hmm. Yeah, but we have to trust that the person is intentionally saying or not saying certain things because that's what's best for them in that moment.
Exactly. Everybody, you have to respect their privacy.
Hmm. Hmm. And then in this case, you no longer have privacy. Like so it's all out there.
That's true.
What will be interesting is that once it's been out for a while, when people start to ask you like the behind the scenes questions, where they're like, "Well, you shared this, but like, what really was happening, or what's the situation really between you and this other person?" Like that's when you start to like get people very inquisitive into.
I've had that already. People say, so how's your relationship with so and so today?
Yeah.
And then I let them know. And I said, well, I didn't write about this part, but this also happened.
Hmm.
And they like those stories. They
Hmm.
like to hear, like you said, the behind the scenes things.
Hmm. Yeah, because obviously, it's curated. It's curated in a way to create a flow in an arc and a story, and not all of our stories could fit into any of
It's so true. You
because
couldn't write everything.
no, and your book is 219 pages. Like that is a beautiful size book because when you pick it up, it doesn't feel overwhelming. It's like, oh, I can read this. I got this covered. But if you wrote every story, that would be like 1,200 pages. And no one, like, I
Yeah.
think, was it Dolly Parton or Babs, what's her name? Barbara Streisand, maybe? One of the two of them, I feel like, came out with a memoir that's like 1,200 pages. And people are like, no, like, it's too long. So even for someone who's like uber famous, that is too much. But they will ask you on the street or after maybe you are doing an author talk somewhere or you're on a podcast,
Mhm.
they might want to know a little more of the story. And then that is for us to decide as the authors of what we do or do not share. So,
Yes. And like you said, you can't write everything down, and you don't want to bore them or make it too long for them. So you have to pick the right stories, and as you said, on that arc, because there are other stories that are interesting, but they go off to another area that might not pertain and flow the right way.
yeah, and I'm sure you probably have at least one story that you're like, oh, I really wanted that to fit, but it just didn't fit, and you had to take it out. I know I have that for my own memoir, where I'm like, I really wanted it, but like, there's just no way to make it make sense, and so it didn't make it. And that's just
Yes,
what it is.
everyone doesn't make the cut.
No, but if you're writing content online or creating, posting on a blog or things like that, you can always include all of those other stories there. So I would encourage folks to follow you in whatever way feels right for them. I am putting your website along the bottom of the screen so people can check you out there. So your book is available wherever books are sold. I always am a big fan of supporting independent local bookstores or bookshop.org, which is kind of an online independent bookstore that gives back to independent bookstore communities. But you can walk into any local bookstore and say, hey, I saw this amazing author and I want to order her book, and they will be able to drop ship it right to your house. So it is available in all those places. Any final words?
Well, I just hope that if anybody does read the book, that they are inspired in some way to go after their dreams, to look in for the positive in life. And I also learned that being grateful helps, because when you're grateful what we have, you don't worry about always feeling sad or not being satisfied, you
Mm.
know. So I think that is a good lesson, to be grateful.
That is a great way to end it. Just ending it in gratitude. I feel like.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm so grateful for you and you kind of, stepping out to say like my story, like I feel compelled to share this story because I think there's a lot of people who are going to really feel seen and heard and valued through your story. So I cannot wait to see where all of this takes you in the future.
Thank you, Grace.
You're very welcome. All right. With that said,